It's a terrible game, an awful sequel, and I dare say also an insult to the Metal Gear franchise and to its fans. Yeah, I was very frustrated and angry in that moment, and it might look like I exaggerated, but after that I played the game 4 more times, watched thousands of walkthroughs, let's plays, and playthroughs, watched interviews, read positive and negative reviews, read comments, posts, looked for forums, read Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene the themes of the Metal Gear games are based on, wished I was never born, checked the Japanese version, talked to my friends and family about it, played the game once again, and after all of this I can finally say that I stand by my opinion. Hello humans and welcome. I'm Rock99 and today I'm finally here for you with the part of my Metal Gear franchise review dedicated entirely to Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. If you followed my streams, you already know how much I hated it, almost from start to finish, mostly because the only thing I knew about it was that it was a sequel, and it kinda is, but we'll get to that later. It took me quite some time to write down this review because I had to understand why my opinion was so different from that of apparently the majority of the gamers who played it. And while I do recognize that there are valid reasons to like this game, it has problems in its design and narrative that just can't be ignored. But now, because I care to be as objective as possible, I'll start with what I think is actually good about Metal Gear Rising, so that I can mercilessly go down like a road roller with everything that it is wrong. So, although Metal Gear Rising Revengeance has been released in 2013, 11 years ago, the Blade mode, or Zandatsu mechanic, is still spectacular and unique. I didn't find anything similar in any other game, and not only it creates that moment of suspense before the lethal strike, but it is incredible how it is perfectly incorporated in the combos and in general in the combat system. And speaking of combat, I appreciated that they took Raiden's moves from Metal Gear Solid 4, allowing the player to perform them themselves. Another aspect of the game that has to be praised is its soundtrack, for how it creates the hype during battles and for how it is incorporated in the gameplay, with the vocals of the songs starting at the climax of a fight. This is acknowledgeable, especially during boss fights, where each boss has its own personalized song. Speaking of bosses, each has their unique combat style and have different ways for you to defeat them, and a lot of players also really appreciated how they gradually become more difficult to beat, testing the player's ability to make a good use of the mechanics. At last, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance proved to be very contemporary and also prophetic, because just like Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, its main theme is meme. Meme as a unit of cultural transmission or imitation, not to be confused with the internet memes the game is so famous for. Okay, now that we are done with what is good, let's begin. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is a third-person hack-and-slash game developed by Platinum Games and published by Konami. It has also been the first Metal Gear game to be released on Xbox at its launch, and it received generally favorable reviews. The core of the game is obviously cutting stuff at the speed of a lightning bolt, and while not all the elements in the game are coherent with it, and that's already a serious problem itself, elements that have been implemented for the sake of this core have issues on their own. The first huge problem comes with the most important mechanic of the game, the pairing mechanic. The tutorial that is supposed to teach it fails at delivering properly the instructions. Failing at delivering an instruction means failing at telling the player how to play, and most importantly, how to win. If the instructions are not clear, the player does not know what to do and is more likely to get frustrated and quit, especially when the game belongs to a well-known genre like the hack and slash for instance, where players expect certain mechanics with certain controls. The pairing is a new mechanic that is very coherent with the game's core, allowing the player to attack, block and counterattack with the same control, for fights to be as smooth and fast as possible, but the tutorial fails to explain how to properly use it. And on top of that, the player might accidentally just start the game without practicing, because eliminating the dummy with standard attacks will result in completing the tutorial successfully. I suspect that they knew this new mechanic was a bit tricky, so they just allowed players to proceed for them to not quit at the very tutorial. In cases like this one, a tutorial depicting the correct way to perform the pairing could have been more effective than text, as it requires controls that are more likely to be found in fighting games. Besides, it's true that in the easy level of difficulty you can choose the parry mechanic to go automatically, But considering how the gameplay is entirely structured on the fact that you learn to use the pairing or not, I wouldn't be surprised if players would just quit rather than play a mode that literally tells you, look, I made it easier for you if you're just incapable. The pairing mechanic also comes with visual effects and outcomes that can confuse the player even more. During the tutorial, it is shown that attacks that come with red glow can be parried, and the player is told that not all attacks can be parried. Then, as they proceed in the game, they encounter enemies that also attack with a yellow glow, and understand that those attacks are the ones that can't be parried. However, as the game continues, this rule appears to be less and less reliable. There are at least 4 types of attacks, and by the end of the game we can notice that attacks with a red glow sometimes can be parried and sometimes they cannot. The attacks with the yellow glow sometimes can be parried and sometimes they cannot. The attacks where the opponent's body parts glow sometimes can be parried and sometimes they cannot. And at last, there are attacks with no glow at all, and some can be parried and some cannot. Basically, most of the attacks can be parried, so what was the point of making these many visual distinctions? They're just confusing, and they probably wasted time during development to be implemented. Not to mention that it really makes no sense that Raiden can parry the yellow glows attacks from Metal Gear Excelsius, but not the yellow glows attacks from the dude with the hammer. And speaking of attacks, as in any other hack and slash game, you can buy combos at the shop, but for some reason the controls for how they are performed are not displayed there. For that you have to buy them first, then pause the game and look for the help section where you have a list of all the combos you have and you can use. I mean, I don't think it's bad to have all the combos listed like this, but why not show the controls in the description when you buy them? They could put this whole description but not the controls? Another huge problem is the camera. It's too low and close to the character. And while its weird positioning that also puts the character on the left side of the screen can still be coherent with the game's core, it makes it unnecessarily difficult to fight flying opponents and to have a clear visual of the situation when the player is surrounded by the enemies. Hack and slash games usually have a camera that is distant enough to see the character's surroundings when there are enemies that can attack all at the same time and from any direction. But here is not the case. There is also the possibility to lock enemies, but this can make things even worse. Also because it is very likely that the enemy movements will drag the camera in angles or directly into environmental assets that will prevent the player to see what is going on. This will happen especially when fights take place in narrow spaces, and this game has a lot of narrow spaces. About the environments, at first I would have criticized the maps for being too empty, but since the core of the game is to proceed at the speed of a lightning bolt, it actually makes sense for them to not have too much stuff around to incentivize the player to explore. However, it is very likely that your character will be slowed down anyway by the debris of the doors, walls, glasses, and fences you will have to cut to proceed. Every single bloody time, your character will get stuck in those debris. Other features that will just slow you down are the stealth mechanics, that only consist in the stealth attack and the box, and that are totally useless, unless the game succeeds in forcing you to proceed undetected in those 2 sections of the game where there are too many mastiffs to fight. And unless you actually care about those 4 random hostages that the enemies take because they're super evil, I guess. Since 2 of them were in a place where there shouldn't have been civilians in the first place, and the other 2 were taken hostage by the local police, their own police. They obviously included some stealth to just remind you that the game belongs to the Metal Gear series, but considering that nothing changes if you're sneaky or not, and that you get points to buy stuff and can replenish your health only by engaging in fights, the stealth in this game is really pointless. At last, the other feature put there because every other Metal Gear game has it, and that just slows down the fast pace of the game but shouldn't be ignored for the amount of information that it gives, is the codec. The very forgettable codec, where you can talk with all the very forgettable characters. And with this we enter the rabbit hole. The codec not only makes you stop the game completely, but it brings with it 6 hours of dialogues with incoherent but also crucial information that, added to what we see through the gameplay, make the whole narrative aspect of the game a total mess. First thing first, what is this game? Narratively speaking, what is it for the Metal Gear franchise? Well, if you listen to fans, some say that it is canon, and some say it is not. If you listen to those who develop it, some say that it is canon, and some say that it is not. And if you rely on Wikipedia, on the Metal Gear franchise page, Metal Gear Rising is listed as the last game of the canon timeline, in other words, as Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriot sequel. But if you go to the Metal Gear Rising Revengeance page, the game is a spin-off. A spin-off is described as a story that belongs to the same universe of a lore, follows a secondary character and takes different aspects of the main story, but is not a sequel of any of the previous works. So how is it possible that this game managed to be both a sequel and a spin-off? I found out that if you go through the entire game totally ignoring the codec, Metal Gear Rising feels and can be considered a spin-off. But on the other hand, if you do stop and listen to the codec calls, Metal Gear Rising is a sequel to Guns of the Patriots. But regardless of the fact that you consider this game a sequel or a spin-off, the real problem is Raiden. Let's see both cases in order, otherwise I'll go insane. At the beginning of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, we see Raiden with his cyber body and sword provided by the PMC he's working for, Maverick, which sent him in Africa for an escorting mission. But this mission fails because he is defeated by the forces of a rival PMC called the Desperado. Then, 3 weeks later, after his recovery, Raiden goes on a mission in Alcancia first, and then to one in Mexico, where he will find out that the Desperado works for this bigger PMC called the War Marshal, which traffics children from poor countries to steal their brains and create new cyborg soldiers. I read on Rising fandom page and heard from other reviews that Raiden, after his defeat, had started aggressively choosing missions where he knew that he was going to face Desperado. But this information is not in the game. Actually, the game puts it in a way that it is just a coincidence that Raiden has to face Desperado members in these first 2 missions. If on a side, it gives the idea that something fishy is going on the other side, it doesn't put the events in the perspective of Raiden pursuing his revenge. And it doesn't create any build-up for the moment he becomes fully aware and admits to himself that he's studying not because it is his job, but literally for the blood of those he defines enemies. This might look like a small detail, but it makes a huge difference for Raiden's character development. The game telling you Raiden is going there because it is his job has a different connotation than Raiden took this job because he might encounter Sam, and the game definitely tells you that he took these missions because it is his job. Not even once in these cutscenes, Maverick members say or hint at the fact that it's Raiden the one who's choosing these missions. Besides, the only reason the mission in Alcancia exists is to deliver Raiden's biography, because if this is a spin-off, not a sequel, his biography had to be delivered in a way or another. And they decided to vaguely summarize it with one of the most unnatural sounding dialogues I've ever heard.
I am Mistral, the cold wind of France.
Like King Peter, the Magnificent.
In general, all the dialogues in the cutscenes sound unnatural, and either waste the lines for jokes, references, and obviousness, or give piles of random information that give no context at all for anything that is going on in the game, in its world, or in Raiden's character. And the worst about all of this is that in these cutscenes, Raiden's declining mental state is portrayed with this sad face he makes when occasionally someone says something that should trigger his PTSD. Raiden, I couldn't find the tickets for Batman Ninja. I'm sorry. If Kojima's Metal Gear games overuse cutscenes and cinema tools, Metal Gear Rising doesn't even try. And it's not like it was that challenging to properly show Raiden's trauma resurfacing as he's reminded of his past. They did it perfectly in the promotional shorts for the game's release, where in a bunch of minutes they explain better than the game's 2 hours of cutscenes why he ends up becoming Jack the Ripper again. Basically, cyborgs have their left arm directly connected to their brains, so when Sam severed Raiden's, he had damaged some memory units, forcing Dr. to replace them. But in the process, Raiden relived the episodes of his childhood where he was being brainwashed to become Jack the Ripper, and that's why his encounters with Desperado awoke Jack the Ripper. Is any of this shown in the game?
No. No!
And trust me, they didn't need the 17 minutes long cutscenes to show these concepts. Practical example.
I was wondering when you'd come, Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper!
Your reputation precedes you.
Call me Raiden.
My name George, like Georgetown.
George.
It's like all damn America president.
something the matter, Raiden?
Jack! No! Turn to stop! Turn to stop! Stop it!
Like cold metal against another man's throat. Feeling his pulse. There's the honor in killing. Oh, wait! This is
Giving information that they know the medium doesn't give properly through trailers and promotional stuff is a subtle way to provide customers with everything they needed to understand what is going on in the story and without them noticing the missing information in the medium itself. The medium itself should be able to tell you everything on its own, and all that is external should be an extra or an expansion, not something that completes it. This alone is unforgivable for me. It's very manipulative. The whole reason he snapped so bad was left outside the game, and all of this just for him to go back to normal right after as it was nothing. From that moment on, you can activate and deactivate your trauma to slaughter enemies, and that's it. Not even the other characters say anything about it. Whatever. So after Raiden found out that Ward Marshall was operating under Senator Armstrong to set up the assassination of the US president in Pakistan with the purpose of reestablishing the war economy, he goes to this base called Solis to get a jet to fly there as quickly as possible, but not before having a confrontation with Sam on the way there. So Sam, after messing up with Raiden's ideals every single time they met, in this particular occasion says,
Get it. We've both heard enough speeches about higher causes by now. History will decide who's right. End of story.
So in the end, Raiden basically kills him to avenge his broken ego, and technically by using cheats. Oh, and in case you didn't know, this scene in the Japanese version is way more meaningful. In fact, in the Japanese version, Cyborg's blood is white as Raiden's blood in Metal Gear Solid 4, because it's artificial blood. And in the game, Sam is the only character you fight that has red blood, because you have to find out that he was the only one who didn't have full body cyborg enhancements. Maybe. But as usual, localization had to mess things up, and the Western version got a less impactful scene and a more disrespectful treatment for Sam. But anyway, after defeating Sam, Raiden flies to this base in Pakistan to stop Armstrong, but he ends up actually helping him accomplish his plan, since by killing all the US soldiers who were there with the senator, the media made it look like an attempt to the US president who was flying right there. Raiden then kills Armstrong, and the game ends with this positive tone, where the war economy is reestablished, Maverick has guaranteed profits thanks to the upcoming wars, and also a lot of cyber kids to employ as their educated, probably lifetime debtors.
We're not running a charity here, huh? Besides, this way they'll learn a trade. Perhaps some discipline, huh?
And where Raiden is still fighting alone to protect the weak he basically helped create. More of that in a minute. If throughout the game, for some reason you remember you have a codec, you will find out that all the context that the gameplay and the cutscenes don't give is actually in the surprisingly well-written dialogues with these guys. When I said that this game is an awful sequel, I honestly had no idea there was so much about the world where the events take place. And indeed it is a well-built scenario that made possible the re-establishment of the war economy, but still, the problem remains Raiden. Because with all this new information added to what we know about him from the previous games, his behavior is even more incoherent. So if you do stop to listen to the codec calls, you learn that after the fall of the Patriots and the war economy they had created, the world fell into a crisis and life hasn't been easy, especially for those who worked as soldiers for the many PMCs around the world. Plus, many of them had been left with serious injuries and/or mutilations, and to be able to keep on living, they needed to become cyborgs. The cyborg technology was recovered from what was left of the Patriots experiments, and was also developed so that cyborgs could at least appear as normal people. This, added to what the game tells us in this scene about how PMCs pay the cyborg conversions in exchange of contracts, describes Raiden's current situation, and why he's so far from his family, despite it said at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4 that he would have never left them again. So because Raiden couldn't or didn't want to reintegrate in normal society, but still had to find a way to feed his family, he started working for Maverick. He even does the boomer speech on how important and fulfilling it is to start a family, and also complains about the fact that he's sent to a mission after the other and has no time to go see his own son. And yet, he resigns to go against Armstrong, and declines Boris' offer to go back working for him at the end. I mean, what? And it's not like he left his job and his family to make a difference. No, he just left it and didn't even accomplish anything. Armstrong died, yes, but the war economy he wanted and came back. And the kids he wanted to save for them to not become like him ended up working for PNC anyway. So what the hell are we talking about here?
And your wife and son? What of them?
They're in New Zealand. Safe.
So, Raiden, your family was so important to go back fighting even after the Patriots were gone, but then all of a sudden Rose and John can take care of themselves?
Rose would understand why I have to do this.
Oh, wait. But this is actually very accurate. The Selfish Gene has an entire chapter about how it's just more convenient for males of many species to throw away all responsibilities and abandon their mate and offspring. So it's not Raiden abandoning his family for the second time, it's just... Sucks to be you, Rose. Seriously now, it's just absurd how awful Raiden's character turns out to be in this game. And you can notice how badly they twisted him since the very beginning, when he talks about how samurai coded to Umami. Through the entire game, Raiden is never really recognized as the cyborg ninja, nor by himself, nor by other characters. It really means nothing that his ability to run fast is called the Ninja Run, and that George here makes a Ninja Turtles reference. It's just a game that manipulates you in thinking that you're playing the cyborg ninja Raiden, while in reality it's actually showing you and telling you that his internal conflict and rivalry with Sam is apparently based on the samurai code he learned from samurai movies and a few books. Aside from the fact that ninjas and samurais are not interchangeable, it was important for Raiden to be and feel like the cyborg ninja.
You sound like a ninja. Exactly.
Because the cyborg ninja is the embodiment of what happens when Monsoon is proven right, when humans don't have the power to defy the selfish memes of their indoctrination. Not even Dawkins' book was this pessimistic, jeez. In the franchise, the cyborg ninja represents a body and a mind that are restricted by anything external, and showing Raiden naked by the end of Metal Gear Solid 2 and with his artificial skin in Metal Gear Solid 4 meant that Raiden was freed from their control, freed from anything imposed on him by the Patriots. And to see him with his cyborg suit once again, while deluding himself that he's now a samurai fighting to protect the weak, is just pathetic. Still shows how weak his mind is, and how easily he can still be influenced and manipulated by anything that is external to him. And the game makes the player identify with this character while manipulating them and feeling cool as they swing a sword at the rhythm of a metal song. And by the way, Raiden actually defeated his Jack the Ripper side back in Metal Gear Solid 4 when he defeated Vamp on Metal Gear Rex's head. Yes, because it wasn't a coincidence that Vamp was one of the characters associated with Raiden. That's why he defeated him exactly where Snake defeated Liquid in Metal Gear Solid. He had actually done it twice in Metal Gear Solid 2 already, and that's also why it was utterly dumb to make Snake face Vamp in Raiden's place in the graphic novel. But I digress. What I think is worse about what they did by using Raiden's character though, is that you can come to me saying, "But Rock, the game is not about Raiden being a cyborg ninja or not, or becoming Jack the Ripper. It's about him fighting for the cause he believes in, to protect the weak. He enjoys to kill and that might be bad, but the point is that sometimes you have to kill for others to survive. It's just..." And to this I can only reply, "You are right. You're totally right." Just as someone who plays this game and later says, the game is not about Armstrong and Desperado trafficking kids because they're evil. It's about having to do bad things to actually do good. Sometimes sacrifices must be made, but it's just... It doesn't sound that good if we put it this way, right? But it's exactly what it is shown and told at the end. Can you see what bad writing does? Especially when it talks about controversial topics such as the sacrifice of the few for the good of the many or a greater good. It doesn't take a clear stand, and leaves things open to any kind of interpretation, even the worst possible ones. Armstrong was right in exploiting third world countries' weaknesses to allow first world ones to develop. Even the good guys can profit and take advantage of this system, you see? And even Raiden can keep on protecting the weak like he wanted, see? The reason why I said this game is an insult to the Metal Gear franchise is that the previous Metal Gear games do take a stand. They did it through Solid Snake character and they proved it through Raiden's journey, that it doesn't matter what the rules of nature aka the Patriots say. Even at the cost of destroying a system and cause a worldwide crisis, it is important to fight for people's freedom, for them to be the ones to choose who they are and what they want to be, without anything or anyone else to decide that for them. In Metal Gear Solid 4, we are told that the Patriots' war economy works. We are told that thanks to their system, people have jobs, and that even things like war crimes have decreased. And the point was that despite all of this, people weren't free. Raiden too, he might have had the cool enhanced body of a cyborg, he could have been the best soldier ever made, but it was something that he never chose and that made him suffer like hell. And Rising comes after that to say, oh well, he has always actually enjoyed it, so let's revive the endless cycle that will keep on creating strong perpetrators and weak victims for him to protect. And it all while quoting the guy who was trafficking and stealing organs from children, because whatever you do, humans are just doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And if that wasn't enough, the game basically tells you that the only reason Raiden didn't end up like Sam is because he really likes to kill people. Look, the only way I can personally accept this game in this franchise is to think it as a parody of it all. A parody like Epic Movie or Vampires Suck, and that just subverts everything to make fun of everything. Since cutscenes from being long and informative became short and full of nonsense, the codec from being player's guide through the gameplay became something completely detached from it, the gameplay from being slow and strategic became fast and mindless, and the message from being you can choose who you are despite everything that happened to you became if you're weak and have childhood trauma, you're screwed. Thinking the game like this might work, but I'm sure it's the result of an awful mix of the old scripts Konami had for the Metal Gear Solid Rising project, and the story Platinum Games developed around the gameplay Kojima gave to them, and that probably had Sam as the protagonist. Of course he is here bored as hell, it was supposed to be his game. I wouldn't be surprised if Platinum have everything ready for their game and then all of a sudden Konami came and forced Raiden in the new project, and probably just because they had already shown the gameplay with him cutting watermelons. When I played the game the first time, it already gave me the feeling that Raiden wasn't supposed to be the protagonist, and then Sam's DLC kinda proved it to me, also because the dialogues in the cutscenes there are actually good.
I was wondering when you'd come, Jack the Ripper.
Welcome to Denver!
I am Mistral, the cold wind of France.
Probably could have left off the last bit.
I am Monsoon. We've been expecting you, Sam. Oh? They say you took on a drug cartel back in Brazil, all by yourself. Almost took it down, too. If you had, another outfit would have taken its place. One way or another, it always goes back to business as usual. You realized that, didn't you, Sam? That's why you left.
I was out for revenge, and I got it.
Well then, let's see what you got now.
Sam as the protagonist of the story would have worked way better, also as a Metal Gear sequel. I would still question the message, but at least it had a whole new interesting character with whom we could explore it. A cyborg samurai from Brazil. I mean, wow, they really did him dirty. Seriously, what a waste. But in any case, I spent too much time on Metal Gear Rising than it deserved, and it's just so badly written that I came to the conclusion that whatever you say about it, whatever you say about its story, you can be totally right just as much as you can be totally wrong. They made it so that everything has an explanation for how ridiculous it might sound, and even at the cost of recording 6 hours of dialogues completely detached from the gameplay, and using promotional spots to deliver the missing information. And they just got lucky gamers who were satisfied with the cool experience the gameplay offers. And with this said, we are finally done with my Metal Gear franchise review for now. In general, I really enjoyed the Metal Gear games and the franchise as a whole. It didn't disappoint my expectation, considering that up until I started playing the games on Twitch, I had only heard things from my friends or read about it in books, as a perfect example of narrative design in video games. Objectively speaking, I'd say that Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty is the best game of the franchise, for how its aesthetics and gameplay and themes make it still still unique and contemporary. I know the graphic is not realistic as the games we have now, but I think its visuals, a bit between realism and others say anime style, pass the test of time very well in my opinion, and I think it's the best also because of its optimistic message at the end, the total opposite of Rising of course. About the upcoming releases, I'm curious to see how Snake's Eater remake will be. I'll play it for sure, but I don't know when, as I currently lack the proper resources to stream it, and I'll probably still lack them at its release. And about the movie, I don't think it was necessary to make a movie out of Metal Gear Solid, as it is already pretty much of a movie itself, but for now we can just wait and see what they do. We might be very pleasantly surprised. Now we can put the bandana to rest, and at this point I can just thank you so much for watching until the end and for accompanying me as I discovered and analyzed the Metal Gear franchise for this review. We have still a lot of franchises and media that we can review together, so leave a like and subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree or disagree with what I said, or if there's something in particular you'd like to mention. For more content, you can come see my live streams on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, and follow me on all the socials, all the links are in the description. Thank you again and see you soon, bye!
Get it up on the board quickly. Initiate data recovery from the arm.
I'm on it.
Focus on the arm. Where's that X-ray? Got it right here, doctor. We're patching replacement memory units into your nervous system. You may become disoriented.
Where am I? This ring is connected.
Getting me a cramp here. He's losing a lot of blood. With me now.
Optical nerve is completely destroyed.
Start the procedure.
Get his optical receptors ready, doctors.
Done.
See your new world.
Strong.
Who's there? Jack the Ripper. Where is he?
Accessing nervous system control panel. He's stable.
What happened to me?
After this, you'll never be the same, Jack.